Let's take you to the story now. South Africa, of course, reaching the milestone of marking just over 200 days without load shedding. The electricity minister is taking stock of how they achieved this. He's speaking at the Letabo Power Station in Gauteng. Let's listen in.
Eskom, who are patriotic, diligent, committed, and also experienced and qualified. These are men and women who have done everything to make sure that we are where we at, and they know that the work is not done. There's a lot more that still needs to be achieved. So thank you very much, TK, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister, for taking us through the detail behind the 200+1 consecutive days with no load shedding, which is clearly a result of the concerted implementation of the Energy Action Plan. With that, colleagues, we'd now like to open the floor to questions from members of the media. I know that we've got media that is following the briefing, who will be participating online. We'll also give them an opportunity after we've taken questions in the room. And Aubrey will be assisting us with those questions. So by a show of hands, those who have questions in the room, please feel free. Any questions in the room? Okay, we'll go to Aubrey. Do we have questions online?
Okay, the first one is directed to Minister Ramokgopa. It's from Chris Yelland from EE Business Intelligence. Now that Eskom's plant performance has stabilized and significantly improved with load shedding not implemented over 200 days, is it not time for the DOEE and its IPP office to officially call an end to the car power ship emergency procurement for the next 20 years? And to also bring an end the wasteful and fruitless litigation currently in progress with outer and green connection. Then there's the next one from Terence Creamer from Engineering News. There are two questions actually. The minister's presentation focused primarily on Eskom's factors that have helped improve the prognosis for the power system. Did any non-Eskom factors play a role? One of the National Treasury's expectations for allowing Eskom to begin raising new debt for projects is that tariffs moves to cost-reflective levels. However, the minister has said such move would be untenable. How can Eskom be given the go-ahead for its new strategy in light of these new contradictory positions? Okay, there are more on the other chat, Tsakani. I'll start with one from Helmo Prince from Independent Media. He says, please give me a breakdown of which countries received how much gigawatt hours exports in August. For example, Zimbabwe received 456 gigawatt hours. Of the 823 gigawatt hours we imported, how much was wheeled to Mozal? He explained that Mozal is an aluminium smelter in Maputo in Mozambique. He went on to say electricity is wheeled from Kahora Bassa via Apollo to Mozal. And then there's another question from Helmo. Has there been any further slippage in the return of service of the long-term outage units, such as Midubu Unit 4? He also has another question. What progress has been made on updating the IRP? Can I pause or continue?
Please continue.
Okay, there's a set of questions from Naila Ibrahim from News 24. During these 201 days without load shedding, has Eskom experienced any critical power stations being shut down for repairs, like Gubek Unit 1? With these, has Eskom relied heavily on OCGTs to ensure that load shedding does not return? Second question from them, does Eskom believe that it currently has sufficient reserves to allow for the unplanned shutdown and repair of key units in Eskom split. Third question, could you expand on the Eskom 2.0, which would be launched, including the 2,000 megawatts of clean renewable energy that the power utility aims to launch? The fourth question, is the minister confident that the days without load shedding can extend to the summer months? And then there's a question from Alex Winning from Reuters. In Eskom's media statement over the weekend marking 200 days without load shedding, the company mentioned that it wanted to launch 2,000 megawatts of clean energy projects as part of a push for a sustainable energy future. Could you elaborate on that? Does that mean Eskom wants to operate more of its own wind power plants and add its own solar plants? Over what time frame, and how could you fund that? Will that be outside of the IEEE program? What sort of project delivery method could be used? Would Eskom take on all the risk itself or work with private partners? That's all on the chat for now, Tsakane.
Thank you very much, Aubrey. We'll now get responses. I think we'll start with Mr. Ngumalo, who will be followed by the GCE, and then the Minister will sum up the responses. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tsakane. I think the question for me is to deal with the issues of units on the long-term outages. I think since the summer plan discussions, we did indicate that the units on the long-term approach was Medupi 4 and Kubek Unit 2. So those units are still as per those plans at Kubek end of the year, and then Medupi 4 end of the financial year, so which is end of March. So we're still working very hard to bring those units in line with those commitments that we have made into the country. Obviously, with commissioning, we might pick up some issues, but our teams in both these plants are working very hard to ensure that we come back in those terms. And then also suffice to say that we are currently now already entered the summer period. There was a question that talks about summer. We are in the summer. We have started our main maintenance program as well. Here at Letabo is one of the stations. So there is quite a number of units that are already going into the maintenance period. So we continue to do that. Then there was a question, Minister, that was talking, I think it came from News 24, about the reliant on OCG. The point we normally make is that this OCG is part of the running the system. That include everything. It includes all the renewables, everything get taken into account when we run the system. That's why it's for where I'm sitting, there's not one. We need to have enough reserves on OCGTs because they've got a role to also cover when the issue for us is when they are running more and then because of the cost issue. But the Minister indicated that if you look at it year on year, we are about 11 to 12 billion now. We are on the reduction on the OCG usage. So that is really the key message. And this year, we are about 5.5 billion less than the budget, which was already reduced for the year as well. So that is quite critical. Then the last point, the Minister talks to also Eskom, but maybe then can also come to say, the Minister talked to the example of Lipalale with Matimba. So those are the opportunities that we are seeing within Eskom to say, how do we deal with the current opportunities in terms of the funding approach? I think we have been out there, national pressure is supporting that we can do the private partnership with Eskom to deal with this issue of how do we fund those opportunities. So those are the things that we're really looking forward. The board has directed us that we need to really start expediting those processes to make sure that we move forward. Yeah, thanks, Denim.
So the context for our strategy in as far as renewables energy within the clean energy portfolio is really one that acknowledges that ESCOM will still have a critical role to play in the electricity supply going forward, and that there's a need to do a step change in terms of embracing other technologies as we get to the towards the end of life of some of the stations. We have said this, that we postponed the shutting down of some of our stations, as was initially planned, to enable us to shore up energy supply, security of supply, but also to enable us to do an orderly transition. An orderly transition that recognizes that we exist within an ecosystem that gets negatively impacted by the discontinuation of operations. And so what we need to do is to really bleed in new technologies alongside our existing operations on our land, on the back of the capacity that we have of our people, and closer grid connectivity. And we indicated that over the next 2 to 3 years, we see a pipeline of just over 2 gigawatts of opportunities. Here at this place where we are at, we're going through the evaluation stages of the commercial proposals for the 75 megawatts PV plant here at Letabo. We've identified renewables in the form of PV and wind for some of the stations, the 5 stations within the Mpumalanga areas. We're going through the details of the funding approach, and as Becky says, this is an approach that we have now embraced, that we will do it on our own or with others. So we're going through those motions of how we partner and bring this to life, because ESCOM itself will grow this its capacity from a clean technology perspective. We already have a wind farm. We had the first big wind farm in the country that we are running in Sere. We're going to expand on it. We've got pump hydro, that is operational. And we have ambitions to continue to expand that capacity elsewhere in Tubat's area. So that aspect is something that we'll come back and brief you in detail at the later stage. I think that's really the issue, Minister. There was a question asked regarding how much have we been exporting to our neighboring countries. We are constantly having flow of electricity in and out of our system. It really depends on how the system looks, but one key point that everybody knows is that Zambia has been going through some tough drought situation, and there's been a call to get support, and to the extent that the system allows us, we've been responsive in that area. The moves back and forth towards Mozal, Mozal is an old existing customer of ours, and again, it's really an issue of how much we have and how much they need, and what opportunities do we have to use them in the entire system. We can provide those numbers, but this is nothing unusual. It's business as usual in as far as the flow of electricity to those countries is concerned.
Oh, okay. No, thank you very much. Maybe just thanks to Becky and Dan for the responses. Maybe for the ones that are left and essentially directed to me. The car power ship is dead in the water. I think a statement was released sometime last year or so to say that it hasn't met the deadline. So something that is buried is behind us. And then maybe to Terrence's question. So it's a delicate balancing act. So on the one hand, the board of ESCOM and the management, the board has got a fiduciary responsibility to protect the interest of ESCOM, ensure that ESCOM continues to be a going concern, and also meet the conditions that are set to them by National Treasury as part of the fiscal support. And ESCOM, in their own calculation, they are able to compute and reason out, if you like, to NERSA, which is a body that is responsible for finally making the determination on what is going to be the applicable tariff. Then ESCOM makes a submission. Make the submission independent of the minister, because Dr. Mteto and the team have got that obligation. and we don't interfere with that process. And built into that is Eskom's intention to ensure that they don't rely on the fiscus going into the future. So essentially it's a strategy to free itself from the national treasury and continue to execute its mandate as a responsible and efficient provider of electricity in the country. So Eskom makes that submission. Then on the other hand, the President unveils the 3 apex priority areas of the 7th administration. What are those? The first one is inclusive growth and job creation. The second one is to fight poverty and reduce the cost of living. The third one is to build a ethical, capable, and developmental state. So let's focus on the second one, on the reduction of the cost of living. So it's a stated government policy to ensure that we are able to reduce the cost of living, just a general appreciation that households and businesses are experiencing, if you like, significant economic headwinds. So we've got an obligation to protect in the main, if you like, low-income households and the poor. And we also know that electricity is a big part of that equation, or if you like, of the cost of living. What the tariff does is a transparent mechanism of supporting an entity like Eskom. So that's what the tariff dispensation does, and it gets to be socialized with the public. Everyone that wants to make a comment is free to make a comment, and NERSA takes that into an account rather, and then makes a determination. And then there are non-transparent and policy instruments that we can use to ensure that Eskom still achieves its ambition without necessarily drawing from the tariff approval, but there could be other support that is given to Eskom. And that's where the policymaker comes in, without interrupting or interfering rather with the NERSA process. So the point is that it's not a binary conversation. So as you put it, those are not contradictory positions. Those are two separate interventions that can be made, so that the chair is confident that whatever decision gets to be made, Eskom is still able to operate and is able to show that it's meeting its treasury obligations. To the extent that some of these interventions that we are proposing internally, and that's a conversation we're having internally, has got fiscal implications. That's the space of the Minister of Finance. All that I can do is to make the submission, but it's not for me to pronounce on tax matters and all of that. It's the Minister of Finance, so that there's no confusion on where that responsibility lies. But internally, I can raise that, and that's an issue we are raising. And I'm more than confident, like I said to the public, we'll protect the interest of Eskom, what the board wants to achieve, also protect the poor, and will also make sure that the lights are on and the South African economy is able to recover. So we'll be able to do that going forward. And then on the question of the Eskom 2.0 is my own reference. I'm sure the board will come and explain. What the point I'm making is that as Mr. the Group CEO, is that Eskom wants to enter.
All right, so those are live visuals from Letabo Power Station. Speaking there is the Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, marking 200+1 days is what they're terming it, but certainly a milestone given just how long it's taken for the country to get to a point where it feels like we can safely rely on Eskom to keep the lights going without any kind of unplanned interruption. And really what they've been doing there is getting us a sense of how they've managed to get here. In fact, there was a question also posed about whether Eskom is now at a point where they're able to support other countries, and it seems that there is a steady flow both in and outside of the country as those transmission lines are maintained. In fact, Zambia was one of the countries that was cited that's apparently receiving some kind of support, but Dan Marokanye, the CEO of Eskom, saying this is nothing out of the ordinary in case it's such grabbing headlines, I imagine. We'll continue listening into that, of course, for you, get you a sense of what else is being said, but it's just gone 10 o'clock. This is The Agenda.